Hi, thanks for joining us. This is Mike Swanson speaking to you live from Nashville, Tennessee, Music City. Glad you could join us for today's webinar. We're going to be talking about 7 important key things to think about regarding the security of your IT systems, including email. This webinar is brought to you by Advocate Capital. I'm speaking to you from our Advocate Capital studios here, and Advocate Capital provides the AdvoTrack case expense funding service. To find out more about Advocate Capital, visit advocatecapital.com. But that's not what we're talking about today. So to help us understand, and maybe if you want, ask some questions later about IT security, which is always in the news, I've asked an expert in the field to join us, and his name is Don Baham. And Don, thanks for being here today.
Thanks. Glad to be here, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us in our studio. We don't get live guests that often.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, we're usually doing video feeds and that kind of thing.
It's good to be local and good to come in.
Yeah. So Don's office is right down the street from us, and Don's company, Craft Technology Group, provides the IT services for Advocate, and you've done such a great job. I thought, well, wow, let's just let our customers have access to you as well. I think it'd be a win-win for everybody.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah,
it's great to be here.
So I'll be stopping and starting some of the slide sharing, what we'll be doing today. Excuse my my mousing here, that's not always perfect. And there we go. So we already did introductions, right? So this is me and Don. I also want to do a quick disclaimer. This webinar is for informational purposes only. It's not designed to be specific advice for your network. You can use this and show it to your IT professionals, ask them questions if you have concerns, share this with them later. You'll get a link to the video recording. You can even email us both. We'll give you contact information at the end if you have specific questions. And I know Don would be happy to speak to any of you. So this is our standard disclaimer. We're going to have the disclaimer all the time. Great. Well, let's get started with the 7 important steps to improving your IT security. And the first is know what is on your network. So what does that mean?
Well, first I'll say, these are 7 of a number of other, steps that you could look at. But I thought we'd take these 7, kind of do a little bit deeper dive on each one of them, and kind of give folks an understanding of at least what some of the important aspects are and what we look for when we try to help clients out. So know what's on your network. This is simply knowing what is supposed to be there, so that you know if there's an anomaly or an exception to the norm. So if you have an understanding of the devices on your network, the kind of communication that goes on in your network, what you're supposed to see on a regular basis, you can identify when things are outside of the norm and alert on those and take action as necessary. And part of that is having an up-to-date network diagram. So this is an example, a simple example, without a whole lot of detail behind it. Something in the real world would probably have a little more detail. It have IP addresses, identifying information for the different devices. This gives you an idea of kind of a basic layout of the network, and you can see where your internet connections are coming in, where the servers connect, where the workstations connect. Knowing kind of the layout of the network, you can identify potentially where you may have an issue if you get an alert or something going on in the network. You have a visual of where you need to go start looking at.
Right, and should you expect your IT professional to be able to provide this a diagram like this for you?
Yes, exactly, and this has been in use for years. Tools like Microsoft Visio, are you able to build these? New tools, something called Lucidchart is available for free, actually, and you can easily build a network diagram. So this isn't something that's terribly difficult, but gives a great visual for somebody, whether it's an internal employee or an outside firm coming in to help you understand what's on the network.
Yeah, right, exactly. You have an emergency, maybe your IT guy's on vacation, you need to bring somebody in to help. Having that diagram would be great. And I'm very visual, I don't know about you, but if somebody writes out what the network is, just show me a picture.
Exactly.
It's a lot easier to communicate.
Yeah, and even if you even if you're technical, the fact that you have a picture available just makes it that much faster.
Great, sounds good. All right, let's talk about controlling administrative privileges.
Right. So in this area, the idea of least privilege comes into play, and that's a concept from an information security or cybersecurity perspective that should be well known to anybody that's in the industry. But those that are not may not understand what that means.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
So least privilege in the security context means we allow you to as much access on the network that it is required to do your job, but nothing more.
I see.
So what do you need to do to perform your job functions? That's the access we're going to give you. Everything else that you don't need, we're going to take away.
Right. And I know that, so at Advocate, you all came in and showed us that actually I, as CEO, should not have complete access to everything in the business, right? And I thought, well, wait a minute, I'm one of the owners of the company. This doesn't seem right. But, you explained to me that, what if someone were to get my credentials, right? Then they can get access to everything, and we wouldn't want that. But nobody's ever got my credentials.
Thankfully,
Thankfully, yeah.
But it's very true. And so while you may have a management title or you're in the executive leadership team, theoretically, you could have access. You own the company. You have all the rights that you would be required to have that kind of account, but it's not necessary to do your daily function. So we take those rights, we limit it. Should your account be compromised, the bad actor would have less access inside the network. So we tightly control those administrative privileges just to a select few, control those passwords, and then if something does need to happen where it requires that elevated rights, we have special accounts that can go ahead and do that.
Right. And I think it's kind of normal, right? We went from one employee 20 years ago to now 45 or 50. And it just kind of over time, everybody had access at first because everybody did everything. And as people got more specialized, at first we didn't restrict it, but then y'all showed us to come in and get that under control. Of course, people didn't like that, right? Well, I like having access.
Nobody wants their, things changed. That's tough. And you're right. As you grow, that becomes a bigger concern. So when you're smaller, you may not segment the network or control those administrative privileges as much. But as you grow, it becomes more important. You tend to kind of just keep tighter control of that data and that access.
Yeah, our accountants, our outside auditors actually like the fact that we're tightly controlling that as well. They like that from a financial risk standpoint.
Absolutely. And then one other thing in regards to administrative privileges, a lot of ransomware or other malware will try to use the privileges you have under your account. So if something got past all the other defenses on the network and was able to land on your workstation and you had administrative rights on the workstation or to other servers or other aspects on the network, it could use those privileges to spread throughout the network. And so again, by limiting those privileges, we can at times limit what malware can do on the network if it were to get in.
Yeah, makes sense. Sounds good. All right. And I think you talked about these briefly. So let's talk about securing your email platform. Boy, is that ever in the news, right?
Email is the most attacked vector right now for getting access to identity information, sensitive information, intellectual property. That's where most bad actors are making their way into networks, is through the email. So there's a lot of things that we can talk about regarding email security, but I will highlight a few. One, use a paid service. So don't use Gmail, don't use Outlook, don't use Live.com, Hotmail, Yahoo for your company email accounts. Secondarily is if you're using Office 365 or Google Apps, put something in front of that called an email security gateway.
Okay.
So Proofpoint, Mimecast, there's a few others out there.
Is that what we're looking at here?
We're looking at a diagram of essentially what Proofpoint will do, or you could replace that name with any one of many other vendors, but Proofpoint's one that we use and we like. But essentially it will scan every email coming into Office 365 and every email going out of it. And it will look for viruses, URLs that are bad, protect against spam, attempt to protect against phishing, which we can talk about in a little bit as well. But I would highly recommend not using Office 365 without some other email security gateway.
Okay. You assume that if it's Microsoft, you're safe.
You would assume, but Microsoft is not a security company. Neither is Google. As much as they like to say they are, I would highly recommend putting something in front where you have control too. And this doesn't happen as much anymore, but Office 365 did have reliability issues in the past. And so a platform like this will allow you to get emergency access to your mailbox should something be going wrong with Proofpoint or with Office 365 as well.
Interesting.
So it provides dual functionality there.
Right. So don't use Yahoo.com mail or Gmail or something like that.
Or email that comes with your web hosting provider.
Okay.
So if you have a website, typically they'll throw in some webmail for free.
Right.
Not secure.
Yeah.
Don't use it.
Yeah, I see, we have about 500 law firm clients. I see emails coming in sometimes, and some of them are on Yahoo or Gmail.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, so that's very susceptible because they don't have that kind of screening, or
they don't have that kind of security, and the credentials are easily cracked. Not all of those kind of services have two-factor authentication, which I know is another thing we'll talk about in a little bit, but a kind of a higher level of security around protecting the username and password. Some of those features aren't available in those free services. So use a service you're paying for. You pay for it for your business. It's worth the investment. And then put a security layer around it.
Yeah, makes sense. Great. Okay. Let's talk about security training, security awareness.
Security awareness. So we like to talk in the industry, it's kind of creating human firewalls is what we like to say. And so again, coupled with email, attacking the user is the way that folks are getting into networks that they shouldn't have access to. And it may not be executive that they're going after. It could be frontline employees or people that handle money. So they're attacking these folks, and we need to arm them with information on how to identify when a malicious email comes in, what to do with that. And you guys do great at that. I know that you guys do a lot of that security awareness training. We do some of that for you. Other firms do as well. And you're able to quickly identify when something doesn't quite look right. You forward it in, say, hey, this doesn't look right. I didn't do anything. Just want to confirm. Yep, absolutely. That was something
I've seen the craziest things, and it kind of freaks you out at first, like when someone pretends to be you. So because I'm the CEO, people try to pretend they're me, which is scary. So they'll send an email to someone else in our organization where it says from Michael J. Swanson, and it says, hey, I need you to wire $50,000. Are you available? Right. Of course, if you look at the email address, it's from somebody in, like, I don't know, Pakistan or whatever. So we've gotten pretty good at catching those, and people know I don't email them to do a wire.
Well, and that's the other side of it. This is not that's necessarily a technical control, right? So in your business, you've made the standard that you're not going to email about wiring money. That isn't always the case. A lot of people rely on email. They'll kind of take it at face value. They may see your name. They may not notice it's a different email address and go ahead and execute whatever you told them to do via email. Rather than, creating a policy in the network or in your company that says, if we're going to wire money, it's going to be verified with a phone call. And make sure that whoever receives that information follows back up with a phone call before taking any action.
So here's a recent one. I'm going to put you on the spot. We haven't discussed this before. Recently, we had somebody emailing one of our marketing team members saying, can you give me your cell phone number, or I need to text you something, pretending to be me. So why would someone try to get someone's cell phone number? I'm like, what are they going to do with that?
So that, and it's actually not, it isn't something we're talking about in here necessarily, but it does tie into somewhat to two-factor authentication. And something called smishing, which is it's a
smishing.
It's a play on words with phishing and SMS. And so with two-factor authentication, sometimes that second factor, that second piece of information, is a code that's sent to your cell phone. If you don't protect your cell phone number with your carrier, somebody can take that over and assume the identity of that number with a SIM swap is what it's called. Now we're getting a little technical here, but all that to say, protect your information with Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, whoever, so that somebody can't call in and move your phone number to their phone. That's why they would want her cell phone.
I see.
So they could pretend to be her, get that two-factor authentication, and then get into whatever system is trying to authenticate using your phone number.
Yeah, it's scary how they're ingenious. And usually overseas, it seems like, or at least pretend to be.
Overseas, and that's another thing that we can talk about too. But is protecting your information. If you don't do business overseas, then don't accept email from overseas. Don't accept access to your systems from overseas. Lock it down geographically. That's something you can do fairly easily.
And that's what we do. In fact, you can't even visit advocatecapital.com from other than the U.S. we put up a page that says, sorry, you can't access our website.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really cut down a lot on visits from, like I said, Afghanistan or whatever in the middle of the night. So
Right.
it didn't cause a problem for us, but we thought it made good sense. Okay, let's talk about we talked about credential theft a little bit. Do you want to talk a little bit more about
Sure.
that?
I mean, I can talk a little bit about one specific example. And I know it's a lot of words here on the slide, so you may not be able to see it, but this is just an example of a phishing email.
Okay.
So this was a healthcare organization that blasted out an email to 700 employees to see what information that they could gather from these employees.
Okay, so they pretended to be phishing just to see what happened.
This is an exercise. It was a sanctioned exercise, not a real phishing attempt, but they wanted to see what information they could pull back. And the way that they crafted the email, they made it look like it was coming from the VP of Human Resources. They put a typo in there to add some potential legitimacy to that. It wasn't polished and perfect. And they put an enticement in here of a $50 gift card for the first 100. So who would be fast to reply and be willing to give up that information for a gift card? And I'm just looking at some of the stats here. 480 out of the 1,700 or 700 received the phish. So that tells me that they did, during the phishing exercise, they did some work to make sure that this email would get through their defenses.
Okay.
So they did a little bit of recon, figured out how is the email being defended, what can we do to craft this so that it will get through, because that's a pretty high delivery rate. So and that would happen in the real world. If somebody is really targeting Advocate Capital or one of your clients, they're going to do a little research and say, okay, what do we need to do to really get through their defenses? And so they crafted it in a way that would allow them to do that. And then the click rate was 17%.
Wow.
82 people. And they really only need one. They really only needed one person to click on it and give up their credentials, but they got 82.
So what did it mean when they clicked on it? What happened?
So that took them to a website where they were asked to enter their username and password for the network.
I see. And they did it.
And they did it.
Oh my gosh.
And some people did it more than once.
Wow.
So those are the,
they want to get more $50 gift cards.
Exactly. So those are the people that, going back to security awareness, they probably need a follow-up to provide some education. What happened here? How can we show you that this is not the right thing to do and take a different action in the future? And then most likely what happened also in this exercise is a few months later, they tried it again to see if they had any repeat defenders.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got an email one time supposedly from LinkedIn that said if I would, I think, fill out a survey, they would send me a $100 gift card. I was like, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. LinkedIn's not going to give me $100 for anything.
They won't. And from all the social networks, if you get an email, just go on to the social network and take the action there versus clicking the link in the email. That's a great point. If that were legitimate, most likely when you go into your LinkedIn profile, there'll be a notification there from them saying, go there. So Facebook, Instagram, the same thing. They're not going to send you an email necessarily. So, and
the IRS is not going to email you.
No, they will not. They will not email you or call you.
Demanding payment. Okay, great. Okay. I don't know anything about this one. I mean, I think I might know, but patch management.
Sure.
What is patch management? It's not like a patch on your knee.
It's not. No. We're actually talking about patches for your computer operating system or applications. So installing those patches on a regular basis. Microsoft, first Tuesday of every month, it's called Patch Tuesday. They, in pure Microsoft fashion, release just a bunch of vulnerability fixes that need to be installed and tested. Same with applications, Adobe, Java, some of the other common applications you're going to use on your computer on a regular basis are updating those at regular intervals. And if you're not installing those on a regular basis, then it leaves your computer open to exploit by any number of different malware out there.
Okay, so these patches, well, why are they having to do these patches every month? I mean, what's changed?
Because security researchers, whether they're with Microsoft or not, are finding holes in the applications of the operating system.
I see.
So bad guys are finding those, good guys are finding those, and trying to patch them ahead of a bad guy using that vulnerability. So what we do, like for Advocate and for others, is we have an agent that sits on the machine, downloads all the patches as they are released, and then install those patches and reboots the machine on a regular basis to make sure they're up to speed.
Yeah, it's a hassle to have to reboot all the time, but I know it's worth it.
It is. And from a security perspective, getting those patches out in a timely manner is important. So staying on top of it. Ideally, you're doing that within 60 days of the patch being released.
Now, you explained to me when there was it happened mainly in Europe. There was another malware or whatever virus was going around and hitting universities, I think, in hospitals. I immediately, I think, emailed you and texted you, and Don, are we safe? You explained to me that a lot of these networks people just had not been doing security patches for a long time.
It's low-hanging fruit for these guys that are out there looking. They're saying, okay, well, this machine hasn't been managed in a while. It's not installing patches. Maybe it's got an up-to-date antivirus, probably not. And then it sees it as an easy target, and it's able to attack it and use that for some other purpose. It might be trying to get access to the network, or it might be some other purpose that is being used. And then I'd also say the last piece of patch management is just making sure you're not using end-of-life software.
Okay.
So
no end-of-life software. I don't know what that means.
So January of 2020, Windows 7 is end-of-life.
Oh.
So you've got a little bit of time, but as an example, are you still using Windows XP, which was end-of-life years ago?
Yeah, wow.
Windows 7 is coming up on end of life. So that is part of your lifecycle management of your systems on your network. Just ensure that you're staying within the bounds of what Microsoft supports.
Okay, so what does end of life mean? I mean, you can still use Windows 7 after that.
It still works, but what Microsoft is no longer doing is providing security patches. So in February of 2020, if somebody discovers a vulnerability in Windows 7, great. That's it. Microsoft doesn't care. They're not going to patch it. So your system is now vulnerable.
So, so get rid of Windows 7 before then. I know you have us on track to make sure
you're good.
We're Windows 10. I'm still an old dog, though. I don't like new tricks. And
Windows 10 is very different than Windows 7. So it's a hard transition.
Guy, like, where is everything I used to have? Yeah, they moved it all. It's like some 25-year-old rearranges and thought it looked cool. Like Salesforce. You use Salesforce.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to Lightning this year. Yeah. And, I'm going kicking and screaming. But it's for the better in the long run. So I won't complain about it here. But that's part of, I think, my shows my age a little bit. So, okay, this is something I learned a lot about not too long ago, and this is something called two-factor authentication. I've also seen it as 2FA, I think, abbreviated before.
Or MFA.
Okay.
Multi-factor authentication.
Okay.
So kind of one and the same, but it's going to be something you know and something you have to get into a system. So you're going to know your username, you're going to know your password, but then you have to have something else. And that could be a variety of things. It could be an app on your phone that pops up a random code. It could be a text message that sends a random code. It could be a piece of hardware that you plug into your computer that generates that code automatically for you.
And why do this multi-factor? What's the benefit of that?
So the benefit is that your credentials are under attack by the bad guys if they're trying to get into your network. Okay, that's how they're going to gain access. It's not necessarily breaking through the firewall. It's really gaining access to somebody that has some rights within an organization. So they're going after your credentials. So somebody does get your username and password, and that's how they've cracked your password for whatever reason. Your account password's compromised. No problem. You've got two-factor authentication enabled to get in remotely. So whether they crack that or not, once they enter your username and password and you get a notification on your phone, I'm not trying to log in right now. So that means, I understand that somebody has accessed my password for a reason. They can't get in because they don't have my phone that's popped up that random code. I need to go change my password.
And so that kind of goes back to, why would someone want your phone number? They want to try to capture your account on their phone, and then try to hack in so they can do the second factor authentication.
And that goes to the vulnerability of that text, the text message being that second factor. So there's other things like we've done for Advocate where we use the Microsoft Authenticator app. So when you log into Office 365, it pops up on that app. That's not something that somebody can steal with your phone number. They can't replicate that app on your phone. And get the right code.
And Salesforce does the same thing for us.
Correct. Right. So that's really what it is. And two-factor authentication, for example, with Office 365 is free. So it doesn't cost you anything. It's included.
In AdvoTrack, our software for our clients, two factors available to them free of charge. We don't charge extra for that, and we hope they use it. We don't force them to, but we hope they use it. Great.
And that's, most organizations have gone that route. I mean, if you have anything with Google, they're going to offer you that. And this is just an example of what the Authenticator app looks like. While it might sound cumbersome to have that second factor, this is really what it looks like. It's an app on your phone. When you go to sign in, it's going to pull up a prompt, and all you have to do is click verify or accept, and you're automatically logged in. So it's not too intrusive.
I think it's easy. It actually pops up on my Apple Watch.
Exactly.
It's really handy, which I'm not wearing right now. Should be wearing it. We're having a steps competition this month. Yeah.
Well, you said it here.
I think for 2 weeks we're doing it. So we have teams, and we're all trying to get steps in. So
it's good.
Yeah, it is. It's good stuff. All right, let's talk about strong endpoint and network security. What does that mean?
So this kind of is that last, it's number 7 here. That last element takes a little more work than some of the others, right? Some of the others you can do very low cost or no cost at all. This is going to take a little bit of time and effort and some cost with some different products or services that you may want to look at. But we talk about strong endpoint security. So having something installed or multiple things installed on the computer that are going to protect it from known malware, something trying to install, or unknown malware where it looks at behavior of activity. It says, okay, this doesn't look like what Mike normally does on his computer.
Really?
It looks a little suspicious, so I'm going to investigate it. Okay, I don't know exactly what it's doing, but it's trying to go somewhere that he hasn't gone before. Or it looks malicious, so I'm going to go ahead and box it in and stop that traffic. Wow. So some of it is learned by your activity, and some of it is known by looking at past attacks and malware.
And are these separate softwares you would install on your system?
Depending, for example, for Advocate, I think we have 2 different agents that we run on each computer.
Let's not mention them in case somebody watching is a bad guy.
But they do two different things, right? One is looking at some web traffic, one is looking at some other traffic, and just making sure that what's going on that computer, whether you're here in the office or you're traveling, is legitimate behavior that's supposed to be happening on that laptop.
And a lot of our clients who are watching this, they travel to take depositions and this kind of thing. So that's a whole different world when you get outside the firewall, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
To think about that. So,
and the other point about strong endpoint and kind of talking about traveling is encryption. So all of your laptops are encrypted. But if you're not doing that, that's something you definitely want to take a look at. And there's some free options built into Windows, and there's some paid options for encryption.
And what does that mean? So
basically, it will protect the data that's on the device if you lose it, as an example. So, or if it gets stolen. So you're traveling in an airport or your hotel, and if the laptop goes missing, you may have some confidential information on there or some protected information. And if it's encrypted, the person that took the device should not be able to access it.
So they can't just open up the machine, pull out the hard drive, and read the data.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
So it stays protected. And then on the network security side, if you want to go to that next slide, it's kind of that defense in depth or that layered security. So you've got a perimeter around the outside of your network, and then we may have some other layers around your server and your data, and some other layers around the desktop or where you're operating on a daily basis. So the idea of just making sure you have intrusion prevention systems, firewalls, things that are protecting both the outside of the network, kind of what's going in and out, as well as those layers that are closer to where you're doing your daily work as well.
Yeah, well, I'm glad there are good guys like you who are technical experts, because a lot of that stuff just makes my head spin.
Right.
And I'm very thankful that we have KTG working with us. So here are the 7 steps then that we talked about. And what I'd like to do now, Don, if it's okay, if you have another minute or two, is to open up for questions. So we'll wait and see if we have any questions coming in. If you have a question, it'll be anonymous. We won't call you out if you have a question about IT, security, or emails and things like that. And let's give folks a chance to do that. And by the way, we'll be giving Don's contact information out if you want to just privately contact him with your questions. And I don't try to know all this stuff, but I know the right questions to ask and who to call and those kinds of things. So, okay, so
if you want to, while we wait for questions, you want to go back to that previous slide of the 7 real quick, and I'll just
please do.
Sometimes it's hard as you digest this information to take away something as many as 7 steps. So I just wanted
Right.
to give 3 that are probably ones that if you could do this right away, it's going to have a large impact on securing your information. That's number 3, number 4, and number 7. So secure your email solution.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing with email, reevaluate it, add an email security gateway, do something to protect that email, because that's where you're getting attacked all the time. Security awareness, same thing. A lot of it has to do with email, helping your employees identify phishing attacks and what to do should they feel like something's coming in that is malicious. And then number 7, kind of establish that, strong endpoint and network security layers. And so working with a trusted professional to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, so if you're going to try to implement this stuff, ask your IT professional about these 3 first. Let's start with that and work your way through it. It can I'm sure if you're watching this and you're not doing any of these, it might be a little overwhelming, and you might not sleep well tonight. You wake up at 3 o'clock and stare at the ceiling. Am I vulnerable? I want to unplug from the internet permanently. So start with that, and this webinar is designed to give you an idea of what to ask. Okay, so we do have a question here. Can you explain again why I should not use Gmail as my email solution?
Sure, and I want to make a distinction between Gmail and Google Apps.
Okay, Google Apps.
Okay, so there's 2 different things.
Okay.
So if your email address ends at gmail.com, that's the consumer version of email for Google. There's the other option where you have a Google Apps, which is a paid account where you bring your own domain. As an example, you could have advocatecapital.com hosted on Google Apps, which again is by Google. It looks like Gmail, but it's your own domain. You have it's a paid service. You have some structure around what you can do with security.
And they have some security add-ons you can add.
They do, and user management and resetting password. It's a paid service, so there's going to be some elevated level of privileges there that you can do.
So let's address our viewers' concern now. He might be using Gmail for his law firm. What could go wrong?
So, for one, it's a free service. Okay, and I wouldn't want to use that as my business email platform. It's a free service. Gmail can do what they want with that data. Now, there's a lot of discussion around privacy and what companies are doing with your data. But again, it's free. You've accepted the user agreement,
which probably says
they can do what they want with your data.
Yeah, mandatory arbitration. You waive your 7th Amendment rights.
Exactly. So that's one aspect, right? It's free. You don't really have control of that information. For that matter, Google could shut it down. They could say, we're not doing it anymore. So there goes your history of email, right? So that goes away.
What about security vulnerability with Gmail?
So I will say the one good thing about Gmail is, from a security perspective, they have done a good job at helping consumers keep up with some of the threats that are out there. They do a fairly good job with spam prevention. They offer 2-factor as an easy add-on for free.
So if you're using Gmail, you could use 2-factor.
Absolutely.
Smart.
If you're not going to move away from Gmail, at least add 2-factor to it, which is free. It's part of the service.
That's good.
So they have done some things. So from a consumer side, I use Gmail on the consumer side.
I use it for my private email.
Exactly. It works. I just wouldn't use it in a business context.
Yeah, if you're sharing confidential client information or something, that's all in the Gmail servers in the cloud somewhere.
Right.
And, they probably are off the hook if they have a breach.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. Makes sense. See if we have other questions. I hope that answered your question. If not, just give Don a call after the webinar. We've heard, you introduced us today to smishing. It's a new one for me. That's SMS phishing, I guess.
Right, it is.
And I've heard phishing on email, but then also spear phishing, which sounds even more deadly. So what is spear phishing?
like these names are great. Well, phishing is, as an example, that exercise we talked about, that's pure phishing, right? It's just blasting out hundreds of emails and seeing kind of what they catch, right? So they may blast out thousands of emails and see who falls prey to it, right? Spear phishing is targeted, so it's going after somebody or some organization directly. Now, you could argue that this exercise was spear phishing because it was just this organization, but more often it's going after the executives of a company, or one executive might be going after you,
right?
And saying, okay, well, we know, or somebody in accounts payable at an organization. Okay, we know she handles the money. We're going to go after her directly.
Yes.
We're going to do some investigation. We're going to see kind of her work patterns. We're going to see who she interacts with, who she's connected with on LinkedIn or whatnot, and go directly after this person to try to get her to take some action.
And we recently had an issue where I think 3 or 4 of our clients got an email from somebody pretending to be one of us here in the office. And, of course, we can't stop them from doing that. They're over in Asia somewhere. And I called you. I said, how are they getting information about our employees? He says, well, you can Google anybody now and find out information from them from their social media and try to find out more about them and try to appear as if you are them. So they're pretty sneaky.
And there's these databases out there that just collect information. So you may fill out a survey or they may look at a social media profile and they just collect all this information in these big databases and then try to mine that information for, if this information gets in the wrong hands, what can I do with it?
Right. Sounds good. What can be done to secure mobile phones?
It's a great
question.
That's
a computer, right? In your hand.
A few things. One, I would say it depends on the platform. So are you using Android or are you using an Apple or an iOS device? So inherently, just by the way that it's architected, an Apple iPhone is going to be more secure. The way that Apple protects their app store is different than Google. Google has third-party app stores. You can download an app from a lot of different places other than Google. There's only one place you can install an app from, and Apple tightly controls that. And so the likelihood of a malicious app or something that isn't supposed to be on a phone getting on a phone is reduced considerably when you're on that platform.
So Apple's more secure there.
Inherently, yes. And they don't allow any security apps on their phone. So you can't install an antivirus for an Apple iOS phone. You can install it on an Android just because.
I would think that would be better.
Well, because Apple tightly controls what you can do what an app can do on a phone. It can't see that deep on a phone. It can't, a security app can't get into where it needs to get into to see if there's a security issue because Apple locks that down completely, which I think is a good thing. So I would just say inherently you got an Apple device, it's going to be more secure. Make sure there's a passcode on your phone. When you set a passcode, do it for more than 4 characters. It's going to, once you enable that passcode, it's going to enable the encryption on the device. So in case you lose it, then the device is encrypted.
So not just swipe to open.
Correct.
Yeah. I use a passcode.
That's good. And then there's software out there that can control that. So it's called mobile device management software. So if you have company-owned devices, you can put them into mobile device management software and it can force you to select a password. Force it to, if you enter the password wrong 10 times, it's going to wipe the phone. So there's things you can control at a company level if you have enough devices to be able to really control the security of the device.
Okay, makes sense. Let's see. This will be our last question. So you talked about the phones being better on iOS. What's more secure? Should somebody be using an Apple computer or a Windows computer for business? What's more secure?
It's been a question for a long time. And I would say traditionally the answer is, a Mac computer is going to be more secure. And the reason I say that is not necessarily because it is a more secure operating system. It's because there's less people using it. And because there's less people using it, bad actors aren't attacking as much because there's not enough. It's not necessarily worth their time. So is there viruses and malware out there for Macs? There absolutely is. So you still need to be safe. But people aren't investing the time and attention into writing a piece of malware for a Mac as they are for a PC because there's so many more PCs out there.
So they're thinking like a business person. It's market share or potential market size.
It's all about money.
Crazy.
They're very well organized. So this is a big business especially for folks overseas that are kind of organized crime. That's what they do. So they see a business opportunity to go after the PC. It's a much smaller pie to go after the Mac. Now, if that changes, that could reverse that pendulum and say, okay, the Mac's less secure because it's getting attacked more often.
Yeah. So is anybody out there arresting these people?
Not if they're overseas.
Yeah.
I mean, the FBI has liaisons to different countries, but it's difficult to put them behind bars. Very difficult.
Unfortunate. Well, thanks for helping us understand a little bit better today about some of the key things to be asking our IT professionals about. And I need you to be a wealth of information for that, because you really helped us here at Advocate.
Appreciate that.
So let's move on and put the contact information up for everybody. So you can have that. By the way, anybody who registered will get a link to a recording of the video later. This is Don Baham's contact information, and you'd be willing to speak to somebody. You're going to charge them an hourly rate if they call you?
Absolutely not.
Okay,
no,
good.
Just give me a call. I'll be glad to.
And they don't have to be in Tennessee.
No, we can support clients anywhere.
You have clients all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
This is Craft Groups. They're active on social media. If you want to check them out, you always put out some good pointers and tips and things like that. This is my contact information. Happy to help you if I can. If you have questions later, just give me a shout. And if you want to know more about Advocate Capital, visit advocatecapital.com. We are the purveyors of the AvoTrack case expense funding service for about 500 law firms around the country, and we would love to help you understand more. We also have even more webinar content on our website. If you go to advocatecapital.com, click on videos, there is a webinars link there. It'll jump you down the page, and we try to provide free educational content to help you run your law firm more efficiently, more effectively, and to fulfill our mission, which is to help an ever-increasing number of plaintiff lawyers get even better results for their clients. And we're glad, if you're a client watching us, we're glad for our relationship with you. Thank you for what you do in the community. We know that you're the keys to the courtroom for your clients, and we feel very privileged to be able to help you get those results that you're getting out there. So way to go. Don, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Maybe we'll have you back sometime. If there's some breaking news on security issues,
absolutely,
maybe we'll have you and do maybe a Facebook Live or something like that.
Glad to do it.
Fortunately, we have some really smart people here in the room. Amanda Unterreiner's the producer and director today.
Great setup.
Yeah, and she makes us look good.
Yeah.
All right. And no, Don and I do not go to the same barber. At least I don't think we do, but we did get matching haircuts for today's webinar. All right, Don, thanks for being here. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Stay tuned for future webinars. Our webinar next month is going to be the 9 hidden costs of self-funding your case expenses. You might not have thought that through. If you're a plaintiff lawyer, you're probably self-funding those expenses. I'm going to help you understand that there are 9 hidden costs you may not have fully considered if you're doing that self-funding. So stay tuned. We'll send a link to the landing page to sign up for that webinar in the email that will send you a link to watch the video of this webinar. Feel free to share it with your friends and neighbors. Have a great day and stay tuned.